She threw herself in front of a speeding car to save a shivering dog, closing her eyes and waiting for the end. She didn't know the driver was a 600-year-old vampire king. She looked him in the eye, expecting anger, but instead, he took her into a room filled with ancient predators. And when they looked at her with hunger, he didn't step aside. The king stood between the girl and an army of the undead, and delivered a warning that silenced the entire room. Her blood is my blood. The silence stretched, taut as a violin string about to snap. Alara opened her eyes, blinking against the harsh glare of the headlights that bathed her in artificial daylight. The grille of the car, a sleek, vintage model that looked like a shadow given form, was less than a hand's breadth from her shoulder. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird, the rhythm frantic and painful. Beneath her, the puppy whined, a high, thin sound that broke the spell. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I've got you." The driver's door opened. It didn't slam. It clicked with the precision of a loaded gun. Footsteps approached. They were slow, deliberate, and made no sound on the waterlogged pavement. Alara scrambled to her knees, scooping the shivering dog into her arms, ready to apologize, ready to be screamed at for her stupidity. She looked up, rain plastering her hair to her cheeks, and the words died in her throat. The man standing over her was tall, silhouetted against the street lamps like a fracture in the night. He wore a long coat that absorbed the light, and his face was a landscape of sharp angles and pale marble. He was terrifyingly beautiful, in the way a storm or a predatory animal is beautiful. "You," he said. His voice was low, a rumble of thunder that seemed to vibrate in the ground beneath her. It wasn't angry. It was baffled. "You threw yourself in front of a moving vehicle." Alara hugged the muddy dog tighter, feeling its frantic heartbeat against her own. "You were going too fast," she managed to say, though her voice lacked the strength she wanted. "It's a residential zone." The man blinked. The motion was slow, languid. His eyes were the color of obsidian, depthless and ancient. He looked from the grille of his car to her, and then to the bundle of fur in her arms. "You risked your life," he stated, as if trying to solve a complex equation, for a mongrel. "He's not a mongrel," Alara snapped, a sudden flare of defensive heat cutting through the chill of the rain. "He's terrified. And you nearly killed us both." Something shifted in the man's expression. A microscopic widening of the eyes, a twitch at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't annoyance. It looked almost like amusement. Or perhaps curiosity. He crouched down, ignoring the mud that threatened his pristine trousers. He was close now, close enough that the rain seemed to bend around him. "Are you injured?" he asked. Alara tried to stand, but her left ankle screamed in protest. She hissed through her teeth, stumbling back down. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a throbbing ache in her leg and a deep, bone-weary cold. "I'm fine," she lied. "You're not," he corrected gently. He reached out, his hand hovering near her shoulder. "You are trembling, you cannot stand, and your pulse is erratic." She froze. "How do you know about my pulse?" He paused, his hand withdrawing slightly. "I can see the vein in your neck," he said smoothly. "And you're pale." "Allow me to assist you." "I don't know you," Alara said, scooting backward on the wet asphalt. The dog growled low in its throat, a brave, foolish sound. The man looked at the dog, and the growl instantly ceased, replaced by a submissive whine. The man turned his gaze back to Alara. "My name is Alaric. I have a physician at my estate, not far from here. And a kennel for your companion." "I'm not getting in a car with a stranger," Alara said, gripping the dog. "Especially one who drives like a maniac." Alaric stood up, towering over her again. He looked around the empty, rain-swept street. "Your alternative is to remain here in the freezing rain with a sprained ankle and a stray dog, waiting for a bus that stopped running an hour ago. I am offering you dry clothes, medical attention, and a ride home once you are stable. I give you my word." He said my word with a weight that felt heavy, archaic. It sounded like a binding contract. Alara looked at the dog. It was shivering violently now, its wet fur matted. She looked at her ankle, which was swelling rapidly. Then she looked at Alaric. Despite the danger radiating off him, a coldness that had nothing to do with the weather, His eyes held a strange stillness. He wasn't looking at her like a predator looks at prey. He was looking at her like a collector looks at a rare, impossible artifact. "Just to the doctor," she whispered. "And the dog stays with me." "As you wish," Alaric said. He offered his hand. When she took it, she gasped. His skin was cold, harder than flesh should be, like polished stone left out in winter. But his grip was steady, pulling her up with an ease that belied her weight, stabilizing her as she hopped on one foot toward the passenger door. The interior of the car smelled of old leather, cedarwood, and something metallic, like blood and iron, though faint. It was impossibly quiet. The roar of the storm was reduced to a distant hum. Alara huddled in the passenger seat, the towel Alaric had produced from the glove compartment wrapped around the dog in her lap. She watched Alaric drive out of the corner of her eye. He didn't drive, he piloted. His hands rested lightly on the wheel, his movements minimal and precise. He didn't blink often enough. "You're shaking," he observed, not taking his eyes off the road. "It's the adrenaline crash," she murmured. "And the cold. Turn the vent toward you." She adjusted the dial. Warm air flooded the cabin. "Thank you for stopping, eventually." "I have excellent brakes," he said dryly. "And better reflexes." "Why were you driving so fast?" "I was running late for a council meeting," he said. "A tedious affair involving territorial disputes and archaic laws. I found myself wishing for a distraction." "Happy to be of service," Alara muttered, stroking the dog's ears. "Nothing like a near-vehicular manslaughter charge to spice up a Tuesday." Alaric made a sound deep in his chest, a low rumble that might have been a laugh. "Indeed. Though in my circles, manslaughter is rarely the charge." Alara frowned at the odd phrasing, but exhaustion was pulling at her eyelids. The seat was heated, the car was smooth, and the shock was taking its toll. She leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of amber and crimson. "Where do you live, Alaric?" she asked sleepily. "You said it wasn't far." "Just past the river," he said softly. "Blackwood." Alara's eyes snapped open. "Blackwood? The old gated estate on the hill? Nobody lives there." "It's been abandoned for decades." Alaric glanced at her. In the passing streetlights, his eyes seemed to flash with a reddish hue. "Not abandoned," he said. "Merely private." The car turned off the main road, the tires crunching onto gravel. Massive iron gates, rusted and entwined with ivy, swung open automatically as they approached. They didn't look mechanical, they looked as if they were moving out of respect. The estate loomed ahead, a sprawling structure of dark stone and Gothic spires that pierced the stormy sky. It was beautiful and intimidating, a relic of a time when architecture was designed to dwarf the human spirit. "Who are you?" Alara whispered, the fear creeping back in, cold and sharp. Alaric brought the car to a halt in the circular driveway. He killed the engine, plunging them into silence. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "I am a man who keeps his word," he said. "Come. Let us see to that ankle." The interior of Blackwood Manor was less like a home and more like a museum dedicated to shadows. The ceilings were lost in darkness, and the walls were lined with tapestries that depicted hunts and battles from centuries past. The air was cool and smelled of beeswax and lilies. Alaric carried Alara. He hadn't asked. He had simply scooped her up from the car seat as if she weighed no more than the puppy she clutched to her chest. Now he set her down on a velvet chaise in a drawing room dominated by a fireplace large enough to roast a whole ox. A fire crackled to life instantly. Alara hadn't seen anyone light it. "Silas," Alaric said to the empty room. A shadow detached itself from the corner. An older man, dressed in an impeccable suit, stepped into the firelight. He had gray hair and a face etched with lines of servitude, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent, and distinctly unkind. "My lord?" Silas asked, his voice dry as parchment. He glanced at Alara, then at the muddy dog, his lip curling slightly. "You have brought guests?" "The girl requires a wrap for her ankle and tea with high sugar content for shock," Alaric commanded, removing his wet coat. "The beast requires food and a bath." "The beast, sir?" "The dog, Silas. Treat it gently. If it bites you, do not retaliate." Silas bowed, though his stiffness suggested disapproval. As you command. Shall I prepare the guest wing? Yes. I can't stay, Alara protested, trying to sit up. I have work in the morning. I work at the flower market. If I'm late, Mr. Henderson will fire me. Alaric turned to her. He was rolling up the sleeves of his shirt, revealing forearms that were pale and corded with muscle. On his left wrist, a strange, intricate tattoo of a serpent eating its own tail pulsed faintly. Mr. Henderson will not fire you, Alaric said calmly. I will purchase his shop if necessary. Alara stared at him. You can't just buy a shop because I'm late. I can buy the city block if I'm so inclined, Alaric said, kneeling before her to inspect her ankle. His touch was clinical, professional. Swelling is significant. No fracture, but the ligaments are strained. You cannot walk on this for at least 24 hours. But Alara, he said, saying her name for the first time. It sounded different in his mouth, precious, heavy. He looked up, his obsidian eyes locking onto hers. You saved a life tonight. Allow someone to care for yours for a night. The storm is worsening. The bridges will be closed. He was right. Outside, the wind was howling like a banshee, battering the stained glass windows. Okay, she whispered. Just for tonight. Silas returned with a medical kit and a bowl of raw meat for the dog. The puppy devoured the food instantly, then curled up by the fire, abandoning Alara for the warmth. Alaric bandaged her ankle with efficient, graceful movements. His hands were so cold. When his fingers brushed her skin, she felt a shiver that wasn't from the draft. It was a primal reaction, a warning bell ringing deep in her DNA. Predator. 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 But he was so gentle. Why do you live here alone? She asked, watching the firelight dance in his dark hair. I am not alone, Alaric said, not looking up. I have Silas. And I have the court. The court? He froze for a fraction of a second, then finished tying the bandage. A figure of speech. My associates. He stood up, towering over her again. Silas will show you to your room once you have eaten. I must attend to matters. Will I see you again? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Alaric paused at the doorway. He didn't turn around. Rest, Alara. We will speak in the morning. Alara didn't sleep well. The bed was softer than anything she had ever touched, the sheets silk, the duvet heavy down, but the house felt alive. It creaked and groaned, whispering secrets in a language she couldn't understand. Sometime deep in the night, she woke up. Her throat was parched. The carafe of water by the bedside was empty. Clutching the wall for support, favoring her wrapped ankle, she limped out into the hallway. The house was dark, lit only by the moonlight filtering through the high windows. She made her way toward where she remembered the kitchen being, hoping to find a tap. She heard voices coming from the library. The heavy oak doors were slightly ajar. Reckless, my liege, a voice hissed. It wasn't Silas. It was deeper, smoother, dripping with condescension. To bring a mortal here? Into the sanctuary? And a stray animal? You invite chaos. I invite what I choose, Valerius, Alaric's voice replied. It was colder than Alara had heard it before. It sounded like ice cracking. She shielded the creature. She faced a 2-ton vehicle without flinching. I was intrigued. Intrigued. The other voice, Valerius, scoffed. You are the king of the blood. You are the sovereign of the night. You are not a philanthropist for broken humans and their pets. If the council hears of this, the council exists at my pleasure, Alaric snapped. Do not forget that, Valerius. You serve because I allow it. They say you are going soft, Alaric. They say the centuries have made you sentimental. Keeping a human pet will only prove them right. She is not a pet. Then what is she? Food. Alara gasped. Her hand slipped on the doorframe, causing the wood to creak loudly. The silence that followed was instantaneous and absolute. Before she could turn, before she could even take a breath, the library doors flew open. A gust of wind hit her, though there were no windows open. Alaric stood there. But it wasn't the Alaric from the car. His eyes were glowing a vivid, luminescent crimson. His lips were pulled back slightly, revealing elongated, needle-sharp fangs. The veins under his eyes were dark, pulsing networks of hunger. Behind him stood another man, Valerius, who looked similar, pale and beautiful, with long silver hair and a cruel mouth. Elara backed away, her heart stopping in her chest. The pain in her ankle vanished, replaced by the pure, unadulterated terror of a prey animal facing death. "Oh God," she whispered. Alaric's face contorted, a struggle between the monster and the man. He closed his eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. When he opened them, the red had faded to black, though his fangs remained visible. "Elara," he said, his voice ragged. "I told you to rest. You're—" She couldn't say it. The word belonged in storybooks and nightmares. "Say it," Valerius sneered, stepping forward. He moved with a liquid grace that made Elara dizzy. "Go on, little mouse. Say what we are." "Valerius, stand down," Alaric commanded. The air pressure in the hallway dropped, the shadows lengthening and twisting around Alaric's feet. "Do not frighten her. She knows," Valerius laughed softly. "Look at her eyes. She knows she is standing in a den of lions." Elara's back hit the wall. There was nowhere to run. She looked at Alaric, really looked at him, the pale skin, the cold touch, the speed, the strength, the court, the age. "Vampire," she breathed. Alaric looked pained. He stepped toward her, hands raised in a placating gesture, palms open. "Elara, I am not going to hurt you. I have had 600 years to learn control. You are safe here." "Safe?" She let out a hysterical laugh. "You drink blood. You were talking about me being food." "He was," Alaric corrected, gesturing to Valerius without looking at him. "I was defending you." "Why?" she demanded, tears springing to her eyes. "Why bring me here? Why didn't you just leave me on the street?" Alaric stopped a foot away from her. He looked down, his expression incredibly weary. "Because," he said softly, "when you jumped in front of my car, you were the first thing in a century that surprised me. You valued that dog's life above your own. That kind of bravery, it is rare. Even among my kind." He looked at Valerius. "Especially among my kind." Valerius rolled his eyes, adjusting his silk cuffs. "Touching. Truly. But now that she knows, Alaric, you have a problem. The law is clear. No human witnesses." Alaric turned to Valerius, his face hardening into a mask of absolute authority. "The law forbids exposure to the masses. It says nothing of a guest within the king's own household." "You intend to keep her?" Valerius looked incredulous. "Like a canary in a cage?" "I intend," Alaric said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "to offer her a choice." "Which is more than you would do." Alaric turned back to Elara. "You may leave," he said. "I will drive you home now. I will compel you to forget this night ever happened. You will wake up in your bed, thinking you slipped on the rain, with a vague memory of a kind stranger who helped you." He paused. "Or," he continued, "you can stay. You can heal. You can keep the dog. And you can see a world that has existed beneath your feet your entire life." Elara stared at him. The fear was still there, pounding in her ears. But beneath it was something else. A pull. A fascination. She looked at the lonely expanse of the hallway, the dark beauty of the house, and the man who was a monster but had bandaged her ankle with hands that could crush steel. She thought of her empty apartment, her dead-end job, the grayness of her life. "If I stay," she asked, her voice trembling, "will you promise not to bite me?" Alaric's lips quirked upward. The fangs were gone now, retracted. He looked human again, mostly. "I solemnly swear," he said, placing a hand over his dead heart, "that you are under my protection. Any who wish to harm you must go through me." He glanced back at Valerius, his eyes flashing red for a brief second. "And they will find that I am a very difficult obstacle." Valerius scowled, turned on his heel, and vanished into a cloud of mist that drifted out the open window. Elara let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for an hour. She slid down the wall to the floor. Alaric was there instantly, catching her before she hit the wood. "I think," Elara murmured, as the room spun, "I need that tea with high sugar content now." "Coming right up," the Vampire King said softly. The morning sun did not break into Blackwood Manor. It was allowed in, filtered through heavy velvet curtains that turned the light into a soft, bruised purple. Alara awoke to the smell of bacon and old books. For a moment, suspended in the haze of sleep, she thought she was back in her cramped studio apartment, listening to the neighbor's TV through the paper-thin walls. Then she felt the sheets silk, cool as water, and remembered the eyes that burned red in the dark. She sat up with a gasp. Her ankle, propped on a mountain of pillows, was stiff, but the sharp agony from the night before had dulled to a manageable throb. At the foot of the bed, the golden retriever puppy was sprawled on his back, paws in the air, snoring with a contentment that bordered on indecent. "He has been fed," a dry voice said from the doorway. "Twice. He has an appetite that rivals the master's." Alara clutched the duvet to her chest. Silas stood there, holding a silver tray. He looked exactly as he had the night before, impeccable, severe, and utterly unimpressed by her existence. "Good morning," Alara croaked. "Where is?" "Lord Alaric is in the solar," Silas said, setting the tray down on the bedside table. It held a pot of coffee, toast, and a small crystal vial of clear liquid. "He requests your presence once you are decent. Drink the vial. It is a poultice for the swelling. It tastes like licorice and regret, but it works." Alara eyed the vial suspiciously. "Is it magic?" Silas raised an eyebrow. "It is biochemistry, Miss Vance. The master has had centuries to perfect natural remedies. Magic is a vulgar term for science you do not yet understand." He turned on his heel and left. Alara looked at the dog, who cracked one eye open, wagged his tail once, and went back to sleep. "You're no help," she whispered. She drank the contents of the vial. Silas was right. It tasted vile, but a warm tingle rushed down her throat and settled in her ankle, easing the stiffness almost instantly. She dressed in the clothes Silas had left, a soft cashmere sweater and leggings that were definitely not hers, but fit surprisingly well. Limping only slightly, she whistled for the dog. He scrambled up, nails clicking on the hardwood, and followed her into the hallway. The solar was a room made of glass and iron, overlooking a garden that seemed trapped in perpetual autumn. Trees with leaves of fire gold and blood red stood motionless against the gray sky. Alaric was sitting in a high-backed leather chair, a book open on his lap. He wore a heavy knit sweater and dark trousers, looking more like a brooding academic than a monster who drank blood. But on the small table beside him sat a delicate porcelain cup filled with a thick, crimson liquid. He didn't look up as she entered. "The swelling has gone down." "Yes," Alara said, hovering by the door. The dog trotted past her and rested his head boldly on Alaric's knee. To Alara's shock, the Vampire King absently dropped a hand to scratch behind the puppy's ears. "Silas gave me the medicine." "Good." Alaric closed the book. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. He turned his head, and the morning light caught the sharp planes of his face. He looked tired. "Can immortals get tired?" "We need to establish ground rules, Alara. If you are to stay." Alara stepped further into the room, her survival instinct warring with her curiosity. "Rules seem appropriate." "First," Alaric said, standing up. He moved with that unnerving fluidity, like water flowing uphill. "You do not leave the grounds without me or Silas. Valerius was not making idle threats last night. There are factions within the court who view humanity as livestock. You are a vulnerability I have exposed." "A vulnerability," Alara repeated, feeling a spike of irritation. "Is that what I am?" "You're a complication," he corrected, not unkindly. "One I have chosen." "Second rule, you do not invite anyone in. The wards on this house are ancient, but they hinge on the master's will. An invitation from a resident overrides them." "I don't have anyone to invite," Alara said quietly. "My parents are gone. My friends are mostly coworkers." Alaric's expression softened, a fleeting shadow of empathy crossing his features. "Isolation is a feeling I am familiar with." "Third rule, you must never go into the West Wing. The basement levels. That is where I keep things that are not for human eyes." "Like what?" "Like the past," he said cryptically. "And mistakes I have made." He walked over to the window, looking out at the gray day. "I have handled your employer. Mr. Henderson has been informed that you have taken a leave of absence for a family emergency. He was compensated generously. Alara gaped. You paid him off? I need that job, Alaric. I can't just. You cannot sell flowers while a sect of ancient vampires hunts you to prove a point to me, Alaric said, his voice hardening. He turned to face her, and the air in the room grew heavy. Do you understand the position you are in? You are not a guest at a hotel. You are a pawn on a chessboard that spans continents and centuries. By saving that dog, by stepping in front of my car, you altered the game. I didn't ask to play, she whispered. None of us do, Alaric replied. We are dealt a hand, and we play it until we turn to dust. I am offering you the strongest shield I have. But you must stay behind it. Alara looked at the dog, safe and warm against the vampire's leg. She looked at the crimson liquid in the cup. What do I call you? Your Majesty? King. Alaric actually laughed then, a dry, rusty sound. Gods, no. Alaric is fine. Though if we are in public, within the court, you will address me as my lord. It keeps up appearances. And the dog? Alara asked. He needs a name. Alaric looked down at the golden retriever. He is a survivor. He stood his ground against a predator. I was thinking. Barnaby, Alara said. Alaric blinked. Barnaby? He looks like a Barnaby. A bit goofy, but sweet. The vampire king looked at the dog, then back at the girl who had disrupted his immortality. A corner of his mouth twitched upward. Very well. Barnaby it is. 3 days passed in a blur of quiet tension and strange luxury. Alara explored the library, which held books bound in leather that looked suspiciously like skin, and the gardens, where the roses bloomed black and thorny. She learned that Alaric didn't sleep in a coffin, but he did avoid the hours of peak sunlight, retreating to his study with the heavy curtains drawn. She learned that he played the cello late at night. The mournful, deep notes would drift through the vents, filling the house with a sorrow so palpable it made her chest ache. She also learned that she was being watched. Not just by Silas, who hovered like a disapproving ghost, but by others. Once, while walking Barnaby near the gate, she saw a large black wolf sitting in the tree-line, watching her with intelligence that was far too human. When she pointed it out to Alaric later, his jaw tightened. Scouts, he murmured. Valerius is testing the perimeter. Is he going to attack? Not openly. Not yet. He needs a reason to challenge my claim. He needs to prove that you are a danger to our secrecy. On the 4th evening, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Silas was moving with frantic energy, polishing silver that was already gleaming. Alaric appeared in the foyer wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He looked devastating, a prince of darkness carved from ice and shadow. We are going out, he announced. Alara looked down at her jeans and oversized sweater. I'm not exactly dressed for whatever that is. Silas has placed a garment in your room, Alaric said. Tonight is the lunar assembly. The heads of the local clans are gathering. If I hide you away, it signals weakness. It suggests I am ashamed or afraid. I must present you. Present me. Alara felt the blood drain from her face. Like a debutante? Like a protectee, Alaric said, his eyes locking onto hers. It is a formality. The claiming. I must publicly declare you under my aegis. Once it is done, the law binds them. To touch you would be an act of war against the crown. And if I mess up? Alaric stepped closer. He reached out, his cold fingers grazing her cheek. You won't. Just stand beside me. Do not speak unless spoken to. And do not bleed. Don't bleed, Alara repeated hysterically. Great advice. I'll try not to trip. The dress Silas had chosen was midnight blue, silk that shimmered like water in moonlight. It had long sleeves and a high neck, modest but elegant, designed to cover as much skin as possible, to hide the scent, perhaps? When she descended the stairs, Alaric was waiting. He stopped adjusting his cufflinks and looked up. For a moment, the mask of the king slipped, and she saw just a man, struck silent. You look. He cleared his throat, the mask sliding back into place. Adequate. High praise, she murmured, her heart fluttering nervously. Come, he said, offering his arm. The car is waiting. The drive took them into the heart of the city, to a skyscraper that pierced the clouds. They entered through a private underground garage, bypassing the lobby, taking a velvet-lined elevator that had no buttons, only a key slot which Alaric activated with a heavy iron key. The elevator opened into a penthouse that was less a room and more a cathedral of glass. The city lights sprawled below like a field of fallen stars. The room was filled with people, beautiful, terrible people. They held crystal flutes of champagne, or something else, their laughter sounding like wind chimes made of bone. As Alaric stepped out, the room went silent. It wasn't a gradual quiet, it was an instant vacuum of sound. Every head turned. Every pair of eyes, amber, green, violet, black, fixed on them. Alara felt the weight of their attention like a physical pressure. She tightened her grip on Alaric's arm. His bicep was hard as stone beneath the suit jacket. Head high, he whispered, his lips barely moving. Show no fear. They smell it. He led her through the crowd. The path cleared instantly, bodies parting like the Red Sea. Alara noticed the details now, the sharpness of their smiles, the predatory grace of their movements, the way they didn't breathe as often as they should. In the center of the room, on a raised dais, sat a council of 5. Valerius was there, lounging in a chair, a smirk playing on his lips. King Alaric, an older woman said. She had hair like spun silver and eyes that looked like shattered glass. We did not expect you. The king goes where he pleases, Madam Katerina, Alaric replied, his voice projecting effortlessly to the corners of the room. And you have brought a pet, Valerius drawled, standing up. How quaint. Not a pet, Alaric said. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Frost began to form on the windows. This is Alara Vance. A mortal, Katerina observed, sniffing the air delicately. She smells of fear. And dog. She smells of my protection, Alaric said. He released Alara's arm and took a step forward, placing himself between her and the council. He raised his voice, the tone resonating with an ancient, vibratory power that made Alara's teeth ache. I, Alaric van der Hoven, first of the line, sovereign of the Night Court, do hereby lay my claim upon this human. He turned back to Alara, extending his hand. She took it, trembling. He pulled her forward, exposing her to the room. Her blood is my blood, Alaric intoned. Her life is my life. Let no shadow fall upon her that is not cast by me. Let no hunger touch her save my own. By the ancient laws, she is ward of the king. He looked at Valerius. Does any challenge this claim? The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Valerius looked at Alara, his gaze sliding over her like a damp cloth. He looked at her neck, where her pulse beat frantically. The claim is valid, Valerius said smoothly. However, he stepped down from the dais. The law also states that a ward must be of use to the crown. If she is merely a distraction, a weakness, then she endangers us all. We are at war, Alaric. The hunters are active in the south. We cannot afford a king who is distracted by a human toy. She is not a toy, Alaric growled, his eyes flashing red. Then prove her worth, Valerius challenged. Let her walk the gauntlet. Alaric stiffened. She is human, Valerius. The gauntlet is for initiates. If she is under your protection, Valerius smiled, surely she can survive a simple test of character? Or is she as fragile as she looks? Alaric looked at Alara. His face was tight with suppressed rage, but also fear. For the first time, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Alara didn't know what a gauntlet was. But she knew that Valerius was trying to humiliate Alaric. He was trying to prove that Alaric was weak for caring about her. She remembered the car. The headlights. The choice to jump. She let go of Alaric's hand and took a step toward Valerius. I am not fragile, she said. Her voice was small, but it didn't waver. Valerius looked down at her, amused. Oh? And what are you, little mouse? I am the one who stopped the king, she said. You all bow to him. But he stopped for me. A ripple of whispers went through the room. It was a bold, perhaps stupid, thing to say. Valerius's smile vanished. Insolence. Enough, Alaric commanded. He moved to Alara's side instantly. The claim is made. The challenge is noted, but denied. She is under my protection, not my employment. She does not need to prove worth to exist. He turned to the crowd. Enjoy the evening. We are leaving. He grabbed Alara's hand and marched her toward the exit. The crowd parted again, but this time, the silence was different. It wasn't fearful reverence anymore. It was calculating. The drive back to Blackwood was silent. Alaric gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. That was intense, Alara ventured, watching the city fade behind them. That was a disaster, Alaric muttered. Valerius manipulated the narrative. He made it look like I am shielding you out of infatuation rather than duty. It makes me look unstable. Are you? Alara asked. Shielding me out of duty? Alaric glanced at her. The red in his eyes had faded, leaving only the deep, endless black. Duty is part of it. But when you spoke to him, when you stood up, he exhaled slowly. You have a fire in you, Alara. It is dangerous. It will get you killed. Or it will keep me alive, she countered. I can't just be a passive object, Alaric. If they're going to hate me, I want them to hate me for who I am, not for what I am to you. They don't hate you, Alaric said softly. They hunger for you. There is a difference. He pulled the car up to the manor. The rain had started again, a gentle drizzle. He turned off the engine but didn't open the door. Tonight was a warning, he said. Valerius will not stop. He cannot attack you directly now, because of the claim. But he will try to drive you away. He will try to make you terrified of this world. I'm already terrified, Alara admitted. And yet you stay. I have nowhere else to go, she said. And I trust you. Alaric looked at her, his expression unreadable. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, then pulled back. You shouldn't. I am a monster, Alara. The history books, the ones humans write and the ones we keep, are filled with the bodies I have left behind. You saved Barnaby, she said simply. And you saved me. I saved you from my own car, he pointed out bitterly. You saved me from the rain. From the cold. From being alone. Alaric closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked incredibly human. Go inside, Alara. Go to Barnaby. I must patrol the perimeter. You're avoiding me. I am protecting you, he corrected. From myself. The next few weeks fell into a routine. Alaric began to teach her. If she was to be part of his world, she had to understand it. He taught her history, the true history. The fall of Rome, vampire infighting, the Black Plague, a culling gone wrong, the treaties of the 19th century. They sat in the library for hours, Barnaby sleeping at their feet, as Alaric's deep voice wove tales of empires rising and falling. He taught her how to spot them. Look at the stillness, he said, standing by the window, watching the gardeners. Humans are constantly in motion. Micro-movements. Breathing, twitching, shifting weight. We are absolute stillness until we strike. Like a statue, Alara noted. Like a corpse, he corrected. He taught her about the hierarchy. The fledglings, the ancillaries, the elders. And the king. Why you? She asked one night, as rain lashed the windows. Why are you the king? Because I am the oldest, he said. And because I was the only one willing to enforce the masquerade. The others, they wanted to rule humanity openly. To return to the days of blood tithes. I stopped them. So you're the good guy, Alara smiled. I am the necessary evil, Alaric said grimly. I kill my own kind to keep yours safe. It does not make me good. It makes me a traitor to my blood. It makes you a protector, she insisted. He looked at her then, across the mahogany desk. The candlelight flickered in his eyes. The distance between them felt charged, electric. He stood up and walked around the desk. Alara, he began, his voice low. Suddenly, the glass of the library window shattered. It wasn't a rock. It was a canister. It hit the floor and hissed, spewing a thick, greenish gas. Hold your breath. Alaric roared. He moved faster than thought. In a blur, he was beside her, scooping her up into his arms. He didn't run for the door. He kicked it open, splintering the wood. The gas was expanding rapidly, smelling of sulfur and wolfsbane. Barnaby! Alara screamed, struggling in his grip. The dog. Alaric didn't stop. Silas has him. Focus on me. He carried her into the hallway, then further, into the depths of the house she hadn't seen. The air grew colder. He kicked open a heavy iron door and carried her down a spiral staircase made of stone. "Where are we going?" she coughed, her lungs burning despite holding her breath. "The panic room," Alaric said. "The vault." They reached the bottom. A massive steel door stood open. He rushed inside and deposited her on a cot. Silas was already there, clutching a confused Barnaby. Alaric slammed the heavy door shut and spun the wheel, locking them in. The sound of the lock engaging was final, like a coffin closing. "What was that?" Alara gasped, clutching her throat. "Wolfsbane gas," Alaric said, his face a mask of fury. "Concentrated. Lethal to us in high doses. Irritating to humans." "Valerius?" "No," Alaric said, pacing the small metal room. "Valerius is arrogant, but he is subtle. This was brute force. This was an assassination attempt." He stopped pacing and looked at her. His eyes were wide, the pupils blown. "They know the wards. They bypassed the perimeter. We have a traitor inside Blackwood." Alara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold stone room. "A traitor? But it's just us. You, me, Silas." Alaric's gaze shifted to Silas. Silas stood straight, holding the dog. "My lord, you cannot suspect." "I suspect everyone," Alaric snarled. "Someone lowered the wards." "Or," Alara said, her mind racing, "someone came in with an invitation." Alaric froze. "What?" "You said, an invitation from a resident overrides the wards. You invited someone?" Alaric's voice was a whisper of pure danger. "No," Alara cried. "I swear. I haven't spoken to anyone." "I haven't," she stopped. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Alara." Alaric stepped closer. "The delivery," she whispered. "Yesterday. A package for me. From the flower shop. I thought it was a get-well gift from Mr. Henderson. The delivery boy, he asked if he could bring it inside because it was raining. I said, sure, bring it in." Alaric closed his eyes. He looked like he had been punched. "A delivery boy," he muttered. "A thrall. A human servant of a vampire." "I didn't know," Alara sobbed. "I didn't know." Alaric opened his eyes. The anger was gone, replaced by a terrible resolve. He knelt before her, taking her trembling hands in his cold ones. "It is not your fault," he said firmly. "It is mine. I did not teach you enough. I underestimated their desperation. What do? "We wait for the gas to clear," Alaric said. "And then I remind them why I am king." He stood up, his shadow stretching long against the curved wall of the vault. "War has come to Blackwood," he said. "And I will burn the world down before I let them touch you again." The air in the vault was recycled, stale, and metallic, tasting of filtered dust and ancient anxiety. It was a small space, lined with provisions that had likely sat untouched since the Cold War. A single bulb cast a harsh, yellowish light over the concrete walls. Silas sat in the corner on a folding chair, his posture rigid, Barnaby asleep on his feet. The dog's rhythmic breathing was the only sound in the oppressive silence. Alara sat on the edge of the cot, her knees drawn up to her chest, shivering violently. It wasn't the cold, the temperature in the vault was controlled. It was the shock. The realization that her simple act of kindness, opening a door for a delivery boy, had nearly killed them all. Alaric stood by the heavy steel door, his back to her. He hadn't moved in an hour. He was listening, his senses extended beyond the thick metal, monitoring the house above. "I'm so sorry," Alara whispered again, the words feeling inadequate, like trying to bandage a gunshot wound with a tissue. Alaric turned. The harsh light deepened the shadows under his eyes, making him look more skeletal, more vampiric. He walked over to her, his movements silent. He sat beside her on the cot, leaving a respectful distance, but close enough that she could feel the chill radiating from him. "Stop," he said gently. "Guilt is a useless emotion in war, Alara. It distracts you. It makes you hesitate. And right now, hesitation is what kills." But I let him in. I breached the sanctuary. "You acted with human decency," Alaric said, looking at his hands that had destroyed armies and built empires. It is not your fault that my enemies weaponize kindness. It is their sin, not yours. He reached out and took her hand. His skin was ice, but his grip was grounding. I should have warned you. I should have told you that in our world, an invitation is not just politeness. It is a metaphysical key. I was arrogant to think I could keep you ignorant and safe simultaneously. Alara looked up at him. Who are they? The ones who did this. Cowards, Alaric spat. To use gas, it is a chaotic tactic. It suggests they do not want a duel. They want extermination. Is it Valerius? Perhaps. But Valerius craves the throne. He wants to rule Blackwood, not turn it into a tomb. This feels different. Desperate. Alaric looked at the sleeping dog, then back to Alara. His expression softened, the hard lines of the king melting into something painfully vulnerable. I have lived a very long time, Alara. I have seen civilizations burn. I have lost lovers, friends, and family to the turning of the wheel. I thought I had forgotten how to feel fear. He squeezed her hand. When that glass shattered, when I smelled the wolfsbane, I felt a terror I have not known since I was a mortal man. You were scared for yourself? No, he said, his obsidian eyes locking onto hers. I was scared that the one bright thing I have found in centuries would be snuffed out because I was too slow. The air between them shifted. The yellow light seemed to soften. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. She saw the loneliness in him then, a vast, hollow ocean that stretched back 600 years. He wasn't just a monster. He was a survivor of endless loss. Without thinking, she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his shoulder. He stiffened for a second, then relaxed, his arm coming around her to pull her close. He didn't breathe, but she felt the solidness of him, the unyielding strength. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered into the wool of his sweater. We're going to fix this. Alaric rested his chin on the top of her head. Yes, he murmured, his voice vibrating through her chest. We are. 3 hours later, the sensors on the vault door turned green. The gas had dissipated. Alaric went first, a jagged dagger of black steel in his hand. He signaled for Silas to keep Alara and Barnaby back until the perimeter was clear. The house was eerie in its silence. The beautiful drawing room was a wreck. The gas had settled as an oily residue on the furniture, wilting the flowers in the vases instantly. The air smelled faintly of sulfur and ozone. In the foyer, they found the delivery boy. He was lying face down near the front door. He hadn't escaped the gas. His skin was blistered, his eyes open and glassy. Alara turned away, ball rising in her throat. He's dead. He was dead the moment he accepted the mission, Alaric said coldly. He knelt beside the body, not checking for a pulse. He could hear the silence of the heart from across the room. Instead, he ripped the collar of the boy's shirt down. On the base of the neck, branded into the flesh, was a symbol, a sun eclipsed by a jagged dagger. This is not Valerius, Silas said, stepping closer, his face grim. No, Alaric stood up, his face terrible to behold. This is the eclipse. The fanatics. I thought they were a myth, Alara said, remembering one of the history lessons. The ones who believe vampires should eat humans, not hide from them. They were supposed to be extinct, Alaric said. I hunted them down in the 1920s. I burned their nests. Evidently, Silas noted dryly, you missed one. Alaric looked around his ruined home. They are sending a message. They do not care about the masquerade. They want to start a war between humans and vampires. And they are starting it here. He turned to Alara. Pack a bag. Essentials only. We're leaving. No, Alaric said. We are relocating to the West Wing. The fortress level. And then, we are going hunting. The West Wing was exactly as Alaric had described, a place of secrets. It was entirely underground, built of reinforced stone and steel. There were no windows, only high-tech security monitors covering every inch of the estate. The armory was impressive. Walls lined with swords, guns, crossbows, and weapons Alara couldn't name. Alaric moved through the rows like a shopper in a grocery store, selecting items with practiced ease. He turned to Alara, holding a short, curved blade with a handle wrapped in leather. Take this, he said. Alara took it. It was heavier than it looked. I don't know how to use a knife, Alaric. I slice bagels. Sometimes I cut my finger doing that. You will learn, he said. Tonight. He led her to a sparring mat in the center of the room. The Eclipse are not politicians like the council. They are butchers. If they come for you again, and they will, I might be fighting 3 of them. I need to know you can buy yourself 10 seconds. 10 seconds, Alara repeated. Okay. Attack me, he ordered. What? Try to stab me. Anywhere. Alara hesitated, holding the knife awkwardly. I can't. Alara, he growled, pretend I am the one who gassed Barnaby. Pretend I am the one who wants to drain you dry. Strike. She lunged. It was clumsy slow. Alaric didn't even move his feet. He simply caught her wrist, twisted it gently but firmly, and the knife clattered to the mat. She was pinned against his chest before she could blink. Dead, he whispered in her ear. You telegraphed the move. You looked at my chest before you struck. Never look where you are going to hit. He released her. Again. For the next 2 hours, he was relentless. He taught her how to hold the blade so it couldn't be twisted away. He taught her to aim for the soft spots, the eyes, the throat, the inner thigh. He taught her that as a human, her only advantage was unpredictability. Vampires are arrogant, he explained, wiping sweat from her brow with a towel. We expect humans to cower. We expect you to run. We do not expect you to step into the guard and strike upward. Alara was exhausted, her muscles burning, her ankle throbbing again. But she felt sharper, more awake. The fear was still there, but it was hardening into something useful. Anger. Why are they doing this? She asked, drinking water greedily. Why no? Because of the prophecy, Silas said from the doorway. He was holding a tablet, reviewing security footage. Alaric shot Silas a warning look. Silas. She needs to know, my lord, Silas argued. If they're the Eclipse, they believe in the sanguine prophecy. What prophecy? Alara asked, looking between them. Alaric sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. It is nonsense. Ancient superstition. It says that the king of the blood will be undone by a heart that beats without fear. They believe that if the king falls in love with a mortal, his power will transfer to her, and the vampire race will become mortal again. Alara stared at him. That's ridiculous. Is it? Alaric asked softly. Since you arrived, I have been distracted. I have been softer. My enemies see this. To the Eclipse, you are not just a woman. You are the catalyst of their extinction. They want to kill you to save vampirism. Alara sat down on the bench. So, I'm not just a political pawn. I'm a religious sacrifice. Essentially, Alaric said. But they're forgetting one thing about the prophecy. What's that? Alaric picked up a massive broadsword from the rack, testing its weight. The steel sang in the air. The prophecy also says that if the king embraces the heart, Alaric said, his eyes burning with cold fire, he will gain the strength to devour the sun. He looked at Alara. I do not intend to become mortal, Alara. But I do intend to show them exactly what kind of monster they have awakened. The investigation of the delivery boy's origin led them to a warehouse district by the docks, a place where the fog rolled in thick and smelled of brine and rot. You stay in the car, Alaric ordered. Silas is with you. Barnaby is back at the manor in the vault. I have my knife, Alara said, touching the sheath strapped to her thigh. And I pray you do not have to use it, Alaric said. Keep the engine running. If I am not back in 20 minutes, or if you see a flare, you drive. You drive until you cross running water. They cannot track you easily over water. I'm not leaving you. Alara, he said, leaning in through the window. He cupped her face. I am unkillable. You are not. Please. She nodded, her throat tight. 20 minutes. Alaric turned and vanished into the fog. He didn't walk. He blurred, a streak of shadow merging with the darkness. Alara watched the dashboard clock. 11:42 p.m. Inside the car, the silence was heavy. Silas sat in the back seat, a shotgun across his knees. It was loaded with rock salt and silver shells. He cares for you, Silas said suddenly. It was the first time he had spoken to her without a tone of reprimand. Alara looked in the rearview mirror. I know. I have served the House of Vanderhoven for 50 years, Silas said. I was a young man when he found me. I have never seen him like this. He is usually detached, calculated. Is this bad? Alara asked. Him caring. It is dangerous, Silas admitted. But it is also the most alive he has been since the Victorian era. I prefer a dangerous master to a bored one. 11:50 p.m. A muffled explosion echoed from the warehouse complex. A flash of orange light illuminated the fog. That wasn't a flare, Alara said, gripping the steering wheel. No, Silas cocked the shotgun. That was C4. We have to go help him. Our orders are to wait, Silas said, though he looked uneasy. Suddenly, a figure crashed onto the hood of the car. Alara screamed. It wasn't Alaric. It was a woman with pale skin and eyes that were completely black, no whites, no irises. She hissed, baring fangs that were double rows of needles. She punched the windshield. The reinforced glass spiderwebbed. Drive. Silas roared, leaning forward to blast the shotgun through the glass. The shot was deafening. The creature on the hood shrieked as the rock salt tore into her shoulder, flinging her backward off the moving car. Alara slammed the accelerator. The car fishtailed on the wet pavement, tires screaming. She spun the wheel, aiming not for the exit, but for the warehouse entrance. Miss Vance. The orders. Silas yelled. Screw the orders. Alara shouted. He's in there. She drove the heavy sedan straight through the corrugated metal doors of the warehouse. The scene inside was chaos. The vast space was lit by burning crates. Alaric was in the center of a circle of bodies, ash and dust. He was fighting 3 vampires at once. He moved like a whirlwind, his movements too fast to track, a blur of violence. But there were too many. A 4th attacker dropped from the rafters, landing on Alaric's back, sinking a blade into his shoulder. Alaric roared, slamming the attacker into a concrete pillar, shattering the stone. Alara didn't think. She aimed the car at the group attacking him and honked the horn, a long, blaring sound that echoed like a war trumpet. The vampires turned, blinded by the headlights. Get in! Alara screamed. Alaric saw her. His face was streaked with blood, not his own. He looked furious, terrifying, and relieved. He grabbed the vampire on his back, ripped him off, and threw him into the others with impossible force. He sprinted toward the car, diving into the back seat just as Alara spun the vehicle around. I told you to leave. Alaric shouted, breathless, pulling the knife out of his shoulder with a sickening squelch. The wound began to close instantly. I decided to renegotiate the terms. Alara yelled back, swerving to avoid a forklift that was thrown at them. They burst out the back exit of the warehouse, skidding onto the dockside road. Are you insane? Alaric demanded, leaning between the front seats. You drove into a nest of Eclipse zealots. I saved your ass. Alara retorted, her hands shaking on the wheel. You were outnumbered. I had them exactly where I wanted them. You had a knife in your shoulder. It was a tactical disadvantage I was baiting them with. Oh, shut up, my lord. The car went silent. Silas, in the back seat next to Alaric, cleared his throat. She has a point, sir. The tactical disadvantage seemed severe. Alaric slumped back against the leather seat. He looked at the back of Alara's head, at her white-knuckled grip on the wheel. He started to laugh. It was a jagged, adrenaline-fueled sound. You are impossible, he said. I'm learning, she said, her voice trembling. Where to? Silas asked. Back to the manor? No, Alaric said, his voice turning deadly serious again. The manor is compromised. If they knew I was here, they were watching us leave. They will ambush the road home. Then where? Alara asked. Alaric looked out the window at the passing city. We need neutral ground. We need sanctuary where the eclipse cannot follow. Does such a place exist? Silas asked. Yes, Alaric said grimly. But the price of admission is steep. Where is it? Alara asked. The Cathedral of Bones, Alaric said. We are going to see the Witch Queen. The Cathedral of Bones was not a church. It was an underground nightclub built into the catacombs of the old city. The entrance was a graffiti-covered door in an alleyway that smelled of garbage and expensive perfume. Alaric parked the battered car 3 blocks away. He looked at Alara. This is dangerous ground. Witches and vampires have a Strained history. Strained how? Alara asked, checking her knife. I may have burned down her grandmother's cottage in 1692, Alaric admitted. You did what? It was a misunderstanding involving a plague and some cursed goats. The point is, Serafina owes me a favor, but she hates me. Stay close. Do not eat or drink anything she offers. Do not give her your full name. My name is Alara Vance. To her, you are just the girl. Names have power to witches. Do not give her yours. They approached the door. A bouncer, a giant man made of stone, literally, a golem, blocked their path. Alaric flashed his eyes red. Tell your mistress the king is here to collect his debt. The golem rumbled, the sound like grinding tectonic plates, and stepped aside. Inside, the club was a sensory overload. Deep bass thumped in the chest. Lights flashed in rhythm with the heartbeat of the crowd. The patrons were a mix of humans who looked dazed and supernatural creatures. They moved through the crowd to the VIP section, a balcony overlooking the dance floor. Sitting on a throne made of woven roots and femurs was a woman. She was stunning, with skin like polished ebony and hair that floated around her head as if she were underwater. She wore a dress made of raven feathers. Alaric, she purred, her voice like honey and venom. You look terrible. Did the dog finally bite back? Serafina, Alaric nodded stiffly. I need sanctuary. Serafina's eyes, which were solid gold, shifted to Alara. She smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly too sharp. And who is this morsel? She smells like destiny. She is under my protection, Alaric said, stepping in front of Alara. We need a safe house. For 24 hours. The eclipse has returned. Serafina's smile vanished. The eclipse? Those zealots are bad for business. They eat the clientele. Then help me destroy them. Serafina tapped a long, clawed fingernail against her chin. Sanctuary implies a truce. But truces require payment. You know the rules, Alaric. Magic demands a balance. Name your price. Serafina stood up. She walked toward them, circling Alara. She sniffed the air near Alara's neck. The girl, Serafina said. She has something peculiar about her. Her aura is not just human. It's refractured. Leave her out of this, Alaric warned. I don't want to keep her, Serafina laughed. I just want a drop of blood. Just a prick of the finger. I want to taste the heart that beats without fear. No, Alaric said. I'll do it, Alara said, stepping forward. Alara, no. Alaric grabbed her arm. You do not give blood to a witch. She can control you. Just a drop. Alara asked Serafina. And you give us a safe house and tell us where the eclipse main nest is? Smart girl, Serafina grinned. Yes. A fair trade. Alara pulled her arm from Alaric's grip. We don't have a choice, Alaric. We need to find them before they find us. She held out her hand. Serafina produced a small silver needle. She pricked Alara's index finger. A single drop of bright red blood welled up. Serafina touched it to her tongue. Her eyes widened. The gold in her irises spun. Oh, she whispered. Oh, this is interesting. What? Alaric demanded. Serafina looked at Alaric, a look of genuine pity on her face. You don't know, do you? You think she's just a brave human. What is she? She's a mirror, Serafina said softly. A genetic anomaly. Once in a millennium. She doesn't just reflect light, Alaric. She reflects power. If a vampire feeds on her, he doesn't just get sustenance. He gets amplified. Limitless. The room seemed to spin. Alara pulled her hand back. That's why the eclipse wants her, Serafina said. They don't want to kill her to stop the prophecy. They want to turn her. If they turn her into a vampire, she will be a god. And whoever controls her, controls the world. Alaric looked at Alara with horror. The prophecy was wrong. It wasn't about him becoming mortal. It was about her becoming something worse. We have to go, Alaric said hoarsely. Now. Deal is a deal, Serafina said, snapping her fingers. A key appeared in her hand. Safe house is at the old shipyard. Warehouse 4. It's warded against everything except dragons, and we haven't seen one of those in years. She tossed the key to Alaric. Run, little king, Serafina whispered. Because every monster in the city just smelled that drop of blood. They know what she is now. The hunt is on. The drive to the shipyard was a journey through a city that felt increasingly hostile. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward the car. Every pair of headlights in the rearview mirror looked like the eyes of a predator. Alaric drove with a terrifying focus, his knuckles white on the leather wheel, his gaze flicking constantly to the mirrors. Ilara sat in the passenger seat, clutching her hand where Serafina had pricked it. The tiny wound throbbed, not with pain, but with a strange, resonant heat. A mirror. The word bounced around her skull. She wasn't just a girl who saved a dog anymore. She was a battery. A grail. A weapon. "Stop thinking so loud," Alaric murmured, his voice tight. "I can hear your heart rate accelerating." "I can't help it," Ilara whispered. "She said I'm an anomaly. That I could make you a god." "I have no interest in godhood," Alaric said, taking a sharp turn toward the industrial district. "Gods are lonely, and they are usually bored. I simply want to go home and finish my book." "You're lying," Ilara said, looking at his profile. "I saw your face when she said it. You felt it. The hunger." Alaric didn't answer immediately. He navigated the car through the rusting gates of the old shipyard, the headlights sweeping over skeletal cranes and mountains of shipping containers. He parked the car inside the cavernous maw of warehouse 4, killing the engine. The silence that rushed in was heavy with the smell of oil, brine, and old secrets. He turned to her then, the dashboard lights casting his face in ghostly green. "Yes," he admitted, his voice rough. "I felt it. When that drop of blood hit the air. Ilara, it didn't smell like food. It smelled like power. Absolute, unadulterated dominion. It sank to the darkest parts of me, the parts one buried 5 centuries ago." He reached out, his hand hovering near her wounded finger, then pulled back as if burned. "That is why we must keep you hidden," he said. "Not just from the eclipse, but from everyone. Even me." The safe house was a converted office suspended above the warehouse floor on a steel catwalk. It was sparse, a cot, a table, a heavy iron stove, but it was dry, and the walls were etched with glowing runes that hummed with Serafina's magic. Silas set about securing the perimeter below, checking the sight lines and setting traps. Barnaby, sensing the gravity of the situation, curled up under the table, his head on his paws, watching the door. Ilara sat on the cot, watching Alaric pace. He moved like a caged tiger, too much energy in a frame that was trying to appear still. "Sit down, Alaric," she said softly. "You're making the floor shake." He stopped, running a hand through his dark hair. "I do not like this. We are cornered. Serafina's wards will hold for 24 hours, but after that, we have nowhere to go. The council will turn on me once they hear the rumor. They will want to secure you for themselves. Then we leave," Ilara said. "We go somewhere they can't find us." "There is nowhere they cannot find us," Alaric said grimly. "This world is small when you have eternity to search it." He walked over to her and knelt, bringing himself to her eye level. The frantic energy drained out of him, leaving only a deep, aching exhaustion. "I am sorry," he said. "I dragged you into this. I should have compelled you that first night. I should have sent you away." "I would have come back," Ilara said, a sad smile touching her lips. "I'm stubborn." "You were reckless," he corrected, but there was a ghost of a smile in his eyes too. "Brave and foolish." He took her hand, the uninjured one, and pressed it to his cheek. His skin was cold, but it warmed under her touch. For a moment, the war outside didn't exist. There was just the sound of the rain drumming on the tin roof and the connection between a girl who shielded the weak and a king who had forgotten how to be strong. "Why me?" she asked. "Out of all the people in centuries, why did you stop for me?" "Because you didn't look away," Alaric whispered. "When the car was coming, you didn't look away. You looked at the thing you feared, and you stood your ground. I have spent 600 years watching humanity run from their fears. You embraced yours." He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. She could smell the scent of him, winter air, cedar, and something ancient like parchment. Her breath hitched. "Alaric," she breathed. He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. "I cannot kiss you, Ilara. If I start, I am not sure I can stop. The mirror, it calls to me. Then let it call, she said, her voice trembling but certain. He stared at her, conflict raging in his obsidian eyes. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing hers, a feather-light touch that sent a jolt of electricity through her entire body. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a circuit closing. She felt his power, vast, dark, terrifying, brush against her soul. And then, the heavy iron door of the office burst open. Alaric was on his feet in a microsecond, placing himself between Alara and the door, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Silas stood in the doorway. But he wasn't looking at the perimeter. He was holding a gun, a heavy modification of a Desert Eagle, and it was pointed directly at Alaric's heart. "Silas," Alaric said, his voice confused, hurt. "Put the weapon down. The safety is off." "I know, my lord," Silas said. His face was a mask of sorrow, tears tracking through the lines of his age. "I am sorry to interrupt." "What are you doing?" Alara asked, stepping up behind Alaric. "Silas." "I am doing what must be done," Silas said, his voice shaking. "I am saving the king from himself." "By pointing a gun at me?" Alaric asked, his eyes narrowing. "You cannot kill me with bullets, Silas. You know this." "No," Silas admitted. "But they can." Silas stepped aside. From the shadows of the catwalk, figures emerged. 6 of them. They wore tactical gear adorned with the symbol of the eclipse, the sun devoured by the dagger. And behind them walked a man who radiated power like a blast furnace. He was tall, with skin the color of ash and hair like white wire. He carried a double-bladed sword. "Malachar," Alaric hissed. King Alaric, the ash-skinned vampire, smiled. "It has been a long time. 1922, I believe. You burned my brother alive in a cellar in Paris." "He was eating children," Alaric replied coldly. "He deserved worse." "Silas," Alaric didn't look away from Malachar, but spoke to his butler. "Why?" Silas lowered the gun, looking defeated. "You are weak, Alaric. You have been weak for a century. You hide in that manner, playing at humanity, while our race starves. While we hide in the shadows like rats. We were meant to be gods. And now you find the mirror, the key to infinite power, and you refuse to use it. She is a person, Silas," Alaric roared. "Not a battery. She is a tool." Silas screamed back, his composure shattering. "Use her. Drink her dry, become the sovereign again, and lead us out of the darkness. If you won't do it, Malachar will." A tragic miscalculation, Malachar laughed, stepping into the room. The office felt suddenly tiny. "Silas promised me entrance if I let him live to serve the new God King. But I think I prefer to take the power for myself." Malachar moved. He was faster than Valerius, almost as fast as Alaric. He backhanded Silas, sending the old man crashing into the wall with a sickening crunch of bone. Silas slid to the floor, unconscious or dead. "Barnaby, hide!" Alara screamed as the dog lunged. Alaric didn't wait. He launched himself at Malachar. The fight destroyed the office in seconds. The table was smashed to kindling. The iron stove was dented like a tin can. Alaric and Malachar were blurs of motion, a violent dance of strikes and parries. But Alaric was outnumbered. The 6 Eclipse soldiers swarmed him, using electrified pikes that sizzled when they touched his skin. Alaric roared, ripping the throat out of one soldier, but another stabbed him in the thigh, pinning him to the wall. "Alaric." Alara grabbed the heavy cast-iron skillet from the floor, the only weapon she could reach, and swung it with all her might at the soldier pinning him. It connected with a solid clang against the vampire's head. He turned, his eyes black with rage, and backhanded her. Alara flew across the room, hitting the far wall. Her vision swam. She tasted copper. "Alara!" Alaric shouted, distracted. Malachar seized the moment. He drove his knee into Alaric's chest, cracking ribs, and threw him through the glass window of the office. Alaric plummeted to the warehouse floor below, crashing into a pile of wooden pallets. Malachar stood at the edge of the broken window, looking down. Then he turned his gaze to Alara. Now he smiled, wiping blood from his lip. "Let's see what you taste like, little mirror." He walked toward her. Alara scrambled backward, her hand searching for her knife. It was gone, lost in the scuffle. She looked down through the shattered window. Alaric was lying on the concrete below. He was trying to rise, but he was broken. His healing was too slow. He had used too much energy. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with despair. The prophecy, she thought. The king will be undone by a heart that beats without fear. Or, he will gain the strength to devour the sun. Malachar grabbed her by the hair, yanking her head back, exposing her throat. "Don't worry," he whispered, his fangs extending. "I won't kill you immediately. I need to savor the charge." Alara looked at Alaric. She didn't look at the monster holding her. She looked at the man who had saved her dog. "Alaric," she screamed, her voice echoing through the vast warehouse. She didn't try to pull away from Malachar. Instead, she grabbed Malachar's wrist with one hand, and with the other, she shoved her thumb into his eye socket. Malachar howled, releasing her for a fraction of a second. Alara didn't run away. She ran toward the window. And she jumped. She fell 20 feet, crashing onto the wooden pallets next to Alaric. The impact knocked the wind out of her, and she felt something in her shoulder pop. But she was alive. Alaric dragged himself toward her. "Alara, why?" "He's going to kill us," she gasped, pain radiating through her arm. "He's too strong." "I know," Alaric rasped. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry," she said fiercely. She grabbed a shard of glass from the floor. "Be the king." She slashed the glass across her palm, a deep, jagged cut. Blood welled up instantly, dark and rich. The smell of it hit the air like a shockwave. Above them, on the catwalk, Malachar froze. The other vampires stopped their advance. They could smell it. The raw, singing power of a mirror's blood freely given. "Drink," Alara commanded, shoving her bleeding hand against Alaric's mouth. "I can't," he groaned, his eyes flashing red, black, red again. "I will hurt you. I will drain you." "Trust yourself," she whispered. "I trust you. Do it." Malachar leaped from the catwalk, descending like a dark angel. "No." Alaric looked at the descending enemy, then at Alara's fierce, terrified, loving eyes. He surrendered. He didn't bite her. He simply pressed his lips to her palm and drank. It wasn't like feeding. It was like swallowing a star. The moment the blood touched his tongue, the world turned inside out. Alaric felt the centuries of fatigue evaporate. He felt his broken ribs knit together in a millisecond. He felt the dormant power in his blood, the blood of the first line, ignite like gasoline. It wasn't just strength. It was awareness. He could feel the spin of the earth. He could feel the electricity in the wires overhead. He could feel the fear in Malachar's heart before the enemy even landed. Alaric stood up. He didn't scramble. He didn't struggle. He simply rose, defying gravity, his feet settling on the concrete. When he opened his eyes, they weren't red. They were white, burning with the intensity of a supernova. Malachar landed, swinging his double-bladed sword. Alaric caught the blade. With his bare hand. The steel shattered. Malachar stared at the broken hilt, his ash-gray face turning white. What are you?" "I am the king," Alaric said. His voice wasn't a shout. It was a multitude, a legion of voices speaking as one. "And you have touched what is mine." Alaric moved. He didn't blur, he simply ceased to be in one place and existed in another. He grabbed Malachar by the throat. "Please," Malachar gagged. The cause is dead," Alaric said. "And so are you." He didn't squeeze. He released a pulse of pure, kinetic energy through his hand. Malachar didn't die, he disintegrated. He turned to dust instantly, blowing away in the drafty warehouse air. The other 5 vampires on the catwalk froze. They looked at the glowing figure of the king, then at the pile of dust that had been their leader. They dropped their weapons. They fell to their knees. Alaric looked up at them. The white light in his eyes began to fade, returning to the deep, endless obsidian. He looked down at his hand, the hand that had ended a life so easily. Then he looked at Alara. She was sitting on the pallets, clutching her bleeding hand, watching him. She wasn't looking at him with fear. She was looking at him with awe. The power hummed in his veins, begging him to keep going. To storm the city. To destroy the council. To take the world. Limitless, Seraphina had said. Alaric closed his eyes. He took a breath. And he pushed the power down. He locked it away, behind walls of discipline built over 600 years. He felt his knees beside her. Elara, he choked out, his voice human again. He ripped a strip of cloth from his shirt and gently, reverently, wrapped her hand. You foolish, wonderful girl. Did it work? She asked faintly, swaying slightly. Yes, he whispered, pulling her into his arms. It worked. From the broken office above, a soft woof echoed. Barnaby peered over the edge of the catwalk, tail wagging tentatively. Alaric buried his face in Alara's neck and let out a shuddering breath. We are safe. I have you. The winter had turned to spring. The gardens of Blackwood Manor were no longer a study in gray and black. Tulips, red, yellow, purple, lined the pathways. It was a chaotic splash of color that the old Alaric would have hated, but the new Alaric seemed to tolerate with amused resignation. Elara sat on the stone bench by the fountain, throwing a tennis ball. Barnaby, now a lanky adolescent dog with paws too big for his body, scrambled across the manicured grass, slipping and sliding in his enthusiasm. He lacks grace, a voice said. Elara looked up. Alaric stood there, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up, and for the first time in centuries, he didn't look like he was carrying the weight of the world. He has enthusiasm, Elara countered, taking the mug. It's better than grace. Perhaps, Alaric conceded, sitting beside her. Things had changed. The council had not challenged him. After the night of the shipyard, rumors had spread. They said the king had found a weapon of old. They said he had decimated the eclipse with a wave of his hand. Valerius had suddenly decided to take an extended vacation to Antarctica. Silas had survived. Broken bones healed, but trust was a slower process. He was no longer the butler. He was a prisoner in the West Wing, serving his penance. Alaric hadn't killed him. Elara had asked him not to. He did it out of love, even if it was twisted, she had said. The council sent a gift, Alaric said, sipping his coffee. A peace offering. A crate of vintage blood wine from 1890. Are you going to drink it? I might use it to degrease the engine of the car, Alaric mused. I don't trust them. Good policy. He looked at her. Her hand had healed, leaving a thin white scar across her palm. A lifeline he had rewritten. And you, he asked. Do you regret staying? You could still leave. I could still compel you. You could open a flower shop in a sunny place. Elara watched Barnaby wrestle with a squeaky toy. She thought about the fear. The violence. The nights she woke up sweating. But then she looked at Alaric. She saw the way he looked at her, not as a mirror, not as a battery, but as the only thing in the universe that made sense. I have a dog, she said. I have a garden that needs work. And I have a very complicated boyfriend who drives too fast. Alaric raised an eyebrow. Boyfriend? A pedestrian term for the sovereign of the night. Partner, then she smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grass. But the shadows didn't look scary anymore. They just looked like a place to rest. Partner, Alaric agreed softly. He kissed the top of her head. Ready for dinner? He asked. I believe I promised to attempt cooking. Lasagna. Oh God, Elara laughed. Do you even know how to turn on the oven? I have mastered the sword, the cello, and the art of war, Alaric said with mock dignity. Surely pasta cannot defeat me. We'll see, she said. They stood up together, walking back toward the manor house. Barnaby trotted ahead of them, barking at a squirrel. The gates of Blackwood were open. For the first time in 600 years, the king was not alone in the dark.